Hey guys, welcome to another No Commentary where I do an intro and outro and leave you in the midtro. This time we're playing a Memoir Blue, and it's described as sort of an interactive poem, which probably means it's going to communicate the story through its visuals and through music, etc. And that's why I thought it would be perfect for nocom, because my stupid voice is not going to get in the way. Now from the description, you play as Miriam, who's looking back through her life, and it seems like there's going to be an emphasis on her relationship with her mother, which will be really cool. And I also noticed that there was an epilepsy warning, or I should say photosensitivity warning, but I'm looking forward to this, and it seems the game can be completed in under an hour, so we are playing the full game here, guys. Enough talking, let's play.
Sitting here was once us both. Hands held in hearts, illuminating love in the dark. Hands held in hearts, illuminating love in the dark. Is it cold where you are? Is it cold where you are?
So that was a Memoir Blue, and surprisingly I have more to say about it than I thought I would. So I'm going to start with the story, and I apologize if when talking about this there's anything obvious that I missed, especially if there's anything allegorical, because I pretty much just woke up, so my brain's foggy. But surface level, what was going on with the story, the mother ran away from either an abusive relationship or just a toxic relationship or just a relationship that was no longer working. She took the daughter and they moved away, likely because she looked so young when it happened. She probably just saw it as like, oh, we're going for a trip, because that's just what kids think everything is a trip, until they realize like, oh, but where's daddy? How come daddy's not here? Or how come mommy's not joining us? Like, whatever. So they move away, and then Miriam gets into swimming and she, becomes a pro at it. And the game seemed to have started at like a very high point in her career where she's, important enough to have all of these media outlets covering her. She's on TV. So it's a pretty big deal, but she sat there on the couch watching this and she just doesn't look happy. And then you get the phone call or text, whatever it is. I didn't know who that would be from at the start of this, but it did seem like the point of this was that she just didn't want to talk to this person, because at least I did send a text. So I don't know if it was important that I could do that, but I am choosing to make a distinction between that and if the game hadn't given me that choice. Like if the only choice was to just look to see who called and then she would just put the phone back, that would make me think there was really something, strained between her and whoever the person was that called. But that one little interaction where I was able to send some kind of text instead made me feel like, I don't know, this is just somebody who was not connected anymore. Now, looking at glimpses of what happened after they moved, it seemed like there was distance being created there where I don't know if it was that the mother was studying in order to, build a career or do something now that she left her husband, so that she could make a living for them. I don't know. I mean, that's what I'm assuming, just because she had all of those books. I also don't know how far they traveled, because it seemed like the little boat trip that we took, even though that was like on a little lake, so that could have just been a regular little boat trip. The fact that that transitioned into the apartment thing made me think that it was also for them having actually crossed the ocean. And she felt a little bit bad that this was, the temporary life that she was going to have with her daughter, them kind of living in this tiny cramped space until they could make things better for them. From that point where you see the mother looking at the books, that's where you're going to see a little bit of the disconnect and of them spreading apart, because you see them in two different rooms. Like, it highlights that here's the mother now in this disconnected space, and then here's this adjacent but still separate space where the daughter is sat there like listening to this song. So as her daughter started to get better with swimming, the mother was having to miss more things. But then it seemed like everything shattered again. I don't know if it was because all the seaweed that she was bursting through, which to me kind of signified that this is one of the deeper buried memories that she really had to break through to find, which is why it was like locked away in a vault. But whatever happened caused this fracture where now you have her more grown up and there are all of these kind of strangers, but no mother. It seems like the whole thing is that her going through all of these memories and her also uncovering, I guess, realizations, like as an adult, about what was actually happening versus how she perceived it as a child. And I guess it being tied to the radio, and that maybe the song was what triggered her going down this rabbit hole. And then, at the end, the mother reconnects, right? But they reconnect in a way where it's like, you see that she embraces the young version of the daughter, and they have this connection where it's like she was just on the carousel doing her thing and she looks over and sees her mom crying, and maybe in that moment that was like the first time when like the daughter realized mommy is going through something. And like now that she as an adult is seeing that, she was able to see her mother for real, and her mother, this 2D version, was now finally able to see this 3D version, which I'll get to that too, but obviously that was just a stylistic way of representing time. So they reconnect, and then the 3D version becomes 2D, showing that there doesn't need to be that separation between the past, the present, and the future. And so she's able to now have reconciled with her past, and she better kind of understands things from her adult perspective. So when we finally get back to like the present where she's on the couch, you move all the dusty ass trophies that have not been upkept. So like they don't look polished, they don't look anything. And yet they were still blocking these pictures of her and her mother. You move that stuff aside and you put her relationship with her mother back in the forefront. And it's not that, you threw away the trophies, right? It's not that she completely discarded this aspect of her life. You revived something that was missing. So when the phone rings the next time, she actually answers. I think the realization, of the difference in perspective between adult you and child you was the most important aspect of that. Her sitting there and reflecting and saying, you know what? Both of us went through some shit, and maybe I didn't appreciate that as a kid. Maybe I didn't understand it, but I understand now. And now I know my mother loves me. And I'm sorry that I moved away from her. I'm sorry that I maybe misinterpreted her distance and the things that she dealt with as her no longer loving me. I'm feeling like it was a lot of that kind of stuff going on. Long story short, I think to have been able to convey a lot of that stuff, assuming anything that I'm saying is even anywhere close to accurate, I think they did a wonderful job. But now I want to get into some of the kind of issues I had with it. The disparate animation styles. At the start, I kind of liked how the 3D Miriam looked. It was very a certain budget, let's put it that way, that I'm used to seeing as someone who plays so many indie games. And so I was fine with it until I saw the 2D animation. It looked so good, and the movement was so fluid, and the characters were so expressive. And the way that the 3D model moves, I also can see the intent of it being expressive, but the quality of the animation didn't get it there. And so it was a situation where the beauty of one accented the shortfalls of the other. And I started saying in my mind, God, this scene right here would have been so much better if she was also in 2D. Even if they drew it in a different art style, that to me would have been better than using this 3D style where the animation and the model was not 100% dialed in to get across, I think, all of the emotion, and in very subtle movements that you might make that are very expressive, but in animation it's very hard to mimic. As for the gameplay, when you have something intended to be more of an interactive experience like this, the gameplay needs to be kinetic, meaning it needs to propel you through the story with a natural sense of momentum and with a pleasing sense of momentum, so you really feel, despite the fact that you are contributing, that you are being told a story. Some places they nailed that, and in other places it just brought the story to a standstill. So some examples of the scenes that didn't kill the momentum and they really acted in service of the story, you getting in the apartment and having to unpack the boxes, that was something that you could just flow through and it never took away from the story. Whereas something that was kind of a less ideal execution would have been, I guess, the part on the pier where you have to bring these planks down, because number one, it was tedious to have to do as many as you did. Number two, the final plank, because of the way that it was sitting on the booth, it made it look like it was a part of the booth. Even when I was clicking on that and seeing the reticle pulsate as if I'm supposed to be clicking here, the plank was not dislodging. So that took me out of it. And that made me feel more like, I'm playing an indie puzzle game versus I'm experiencing a story. I noticed that I'm going to get back to the thing about the scenes and momentum and whatever in a second, but I'm playing it on Game Pass, which means I'm playing it on my Xbox One, but there was no option to adjust the sensitivity. So I felt like there were a lot of instances in some scenes where I needed to be able to carefully dial in where I wanted the cursor to go, and I couldn't because a slight tap to my toggle stick would make the cursor go like whoop. You're not going to see me struggling with any of that. You're, for the most part, just going to see a very smooth experience. So that's another thing that I want to point out. Also, as far as the scenes that I didn't feel were as intuitive as some of the others, I want to say the carousel scene was one of them. When you're presented with a scene where there is a lot of darkness and then there's light, you move towards the light. That directs your attention to it. So in the carousel scene, you have all of this darkness, and then you have the carousel in the middle. So my instinct at first as the gamer was that the first thing I had to click in that scene was going to be something on the carousel. So when I started clicking on the carousel and nothing happened, now I have a bit of a dilemma. Is it because I just haven't found the right spot to click on yet? Because that was the case in some other things where I knew I had to click on this thing, but I just didn't touch the right part of it or whatever. Was that what was happening? Or was I supposed to do something else? And it was only after me saying, okay, since I don't think it's the carousel, let me look at the darkness. And when I did realize that, I was like, let's light this part of the scene. So with that scene, even though it only took a span of maybe a minute, in terms of what I said about the story being kinetic, it still felt like an eternity. It was still enough to take me out of the story, and now I'm not thinking about what this scene says about the relationship or about, the history or what memory this is. Now I'm thinking about what the fuck do I need to click? So to me, a tiny slight improvement to maintain that momentum would have been having that scene open, but then as soon as the scene opens, there's just a whamp, like a little surge or a little flicker in the bulb of one of the lampposts. And that will immediately draw the player's eye to say, oh, there is something in this darkness that's in the foreground. I'm not just supposed to be looking at the carousel, there's something here. And the last major thing I kind of want to talk about is that the game could be optimized a bit better. Going into the swimming with the fish scene coming right off the subway, it just went to a screen where I was drawing lines. But then I thought, oh, maybe it's not glitching out because I heard a ding at one point, and I noticed that in some areas of the screen, like I was leaving behind not just like a trail of a line of tiny dots, but like I was leaving behind big dots. And it was crazy, and it got to the point where I was like, you know what? I'm gonna just assume this is a bug. The question is it like a functional bug where the game itself has actually like crashed or something right now? Or is it like a graphical bug? Quick way to troubleshoot a graphical glitch, go to a different screen. So that's what I did. I just hit the menu button, right? And then went back in. And sure enough, all of that cleared up, but now I was just on a static image. So at that point, I had to just go to the main menu and then hope that wherever it dropped me back in when I continued the game was not going to be that far. Thankfully, it wasn't. And then I got to see how the scene was actually supposed to play out, which is what you guys will see. Anyway, overall, I think this was a wonderful game. I'm not going to say it's up there with some of my favorite games that Annapurna has published, but it's definitely in line with the games that Annapurna publishes. I feel like this might be this studio's first game. This means that this is a very promising studio whose work managed to nail a lot of like the nuances of good storytelling that still some studios just don't get. And I always think that's a good thing when you can nail the thing that people with more experience and skill than you get wrong. If you can nail that right out of the gate, then you're golden because the talent and experience and skill will come with time. So kudos to them. Beautiful music throughout. So kudos to the developer. And I know it sounded like I was about to wrap this up because I am, but I do want to mention two more things very quick, okay? One is the way that the game opened. So basically where the first chapter starts, where you're standing there with the metal in your hand, you clicking, and that ending up being, the flash of a camera and her shrinking away from that. That to me was brilliant. Like it was such a strong opening. And I feel like if it had gone from the introduction of the game where you're on the couch and blah, 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 and you get the phone call, to her just kind of like putting on the radio that immediately morphs into that first scene, it would have been a much stronger opening than all of the stuff that felt tangential with the ice cubes in the cup and, the radio thing, which was cool. But I feel like that was less of a ramp up than it could have been. But like I said, overall, I thought it was really good. And with that, thank you so much for watching. If you like my nocom series, you like being able to get a break from my voice every once in a while, then go ahead and subscribe to my channel. Support me on Patreon at the $1 tier or higher. And I'll be back at some point with another episode of nocom.